Hi, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. By now you all know me, but if not, my name's Mario. I put out videos primarily on clinical research. As of late, I've been putting out videos for people studying for the ACRP CCRA exam. In future videos, I will break down ICH E6 R2, which is going to be the core of what you're going to be tested on in the ACRP CCRA exam. But today's video is going to be a little bit different. In today's video, I'm going to talk about a question/comment that I get on YouTube all the time that I'm completely not qualified to answer. I'll share some of my thoughts on the question and maybe a way I would go about doing what's being asked, but it's something I don't have experience with. It's something that I think that would be extremely challenging, and it's something that I don't believe I'm fully qualified to answer. So before I dig into this question, I need to remind you as always to please take a moment and smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Channel is approaching 2,000 subscribers, so thank you for your support. Hopefully, as the subscriber count grows, I can start bringing in some guest speakers that can give a different perspective on some of these questions, including the question that I'm about to talk about next. So without further ado, let's get into this question. So the question goes something along the lines of, I live in country X, and I'm trying to get a job in clinical research in country Y. How do I go about doing that? So I have bad news to start with. This is going to be one of the most challenging things to do, with a few exceptions. So if you are in the United States and trying to get a job in Canada or vice versa, and you have experience, I don't think you'll have too much of a problem transitioning. Similar if you live in two EU countries that are adjacent to each other. So say you live in Germany and are trying to get a job in Austria or vice versa, I don't think you'll have an issue there. But usually that's not what I'm being asked. It's usually something along the lines of, I live on one continent and I'm trying to get a job on a different continent. So there are going to be a lot of obstacles here. So first, potentially the language. Yeah, you would obviously only be considered where you are fluent in whatever the local language is. So that is something you definitely want to make sure to spend however long to become fluent in the language if you're not already. Even for countries that speak the same language, sometimes there are intricacies in the language that you should learn. For example, if you are in the United States and trying to move to the United Kingdom, if you're in India trying to move to the United States, the way that English is spoken in different places is not necessarily the same. And oftentimes there are slang terms or things that are commonly used that you may not necessarily be familiar with based on the version spoken locally. The next obstacle to talk about beyond language is going to be work authorization. Clinical research jobs in general won't offer you work authorization. So if your hope is that you're going to get a clinical research job and get sponsored to go to a different country, I don't think that's very likely. Again, if you're in an adjacent country like the two EU, you wouldn't need any work authorization. You'd automatically be authorized to work. US and Canada, we have some alternate visas that are fairly easy to get. But say two different countries, India to Canada, you're going to have a hard time, or Australia or New Zealand, all these places that would have different types of work authorization required. So if you need a work authorization, you're going to be very, very, very limited. And I'll tell you part of my thought process here. If we open a clinical research position in the United States, and I have been on the receiving end of resumes a few times, within the 24 hours post opening a position, we usually are flooded with thousands of domestic applicants. I can't imagine picking the one person that doesn't live in the country out of thousands and thousands of CVs to interview. Yeah, chances are it's going to be someone that not only is in the country, but is also in the region that I want them to be in. I think you're going to face extreme challenges there. So just sending your CV out through an online service is probably not going to be enough to be considered for the role. There are other challenges. Local regulations. You're not necessarily going to be familiar with all the local regulations. Yes, ICH goes across globally, but there are local regulations in different places. And in the United States, even state to state, we have different regulations now. Because I'm monitored in multiple states, I'm familiar with a lot of them. But you need to know these things. And chances are, if you're coming from a completely different country, you're not as familiar with what to look out for as you go from state to state in the United States, if this is where you were to come. So I don't think this is a great job for being able to easily move from one country to another. I do think most countries do have shortage professions, so I would see what the shortage professions are if you're looking for work authorization and see if you can somehow apply to one of those professions that's in high demand in that country. For the longest time in the United States, it was nursing that was in high demand, but every country should have some professions that they need, that they're trying to encourage people to come to their country to perform. So those are my thoughts on all the obstacles. But if I were going to try this and get a job in another country, this is how I'd go about it. First, visit the country. Go get a visitor visa, spend a couple of months there, and try to understand locally how the language is spoken, how people interact, a little bit of the culture. While doing this, also start reaching out on LinkedIn or to various people that have the role that you want in that country and see if they'd be willing to spend 15 minutes talking to you about what it's like to work in that role, how they think you might be able to get it, and how you can go about it there. The one thing I wouldn't do is just blanket my resume to different companies. You're not going to really be considered for the role, so you are wasting your time just sending out your resume. You really want to be adding that networking component. This is exceedingly important because chances are the way you're going to get hired is somebody says, hey, you have some great experience. I realize there are going to be limitations to hiring you, but I really want to give you a chance. So that's going to be, in my book, your best bet to getting a job in a different country. But again, I've never done it. I'm not the most qualified person to answer this question. I do appreciate all the comments on YouTube, but I'm so sorry they can't provide any more meaningful insight into this question. All right, so hopefully that kind of answers the question and why I don't really respond to all these comments that often, because I just don't know what to say other than tell you you're going against something that I think is exceedingly challenging. All right, I'll end that video here. In the upcoming weeks, I will be back with the study series for the ACRP CCRA exam, so stay tuned for that. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it.